And now on the line is Gavin Douglas. Gavin is a content creator with Concern Worldwide. Gavin, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me.
Gavin, I got in touch with you today to mainly talk about your recent personal work on the borders of Ukraine. But before we talk about that, could you tell our listeners on Near FM first a bit about how you managed to end up working with Concern and a bit about your work with them in general first, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I started my studies in locally in Dulig, before moving on to different marketing companies and production companies around Ireland. And I was doing that for about 3 or 4 years. And then the job came up with Concern, and there was an element of travel involved, and yeah, it sounded interesting, and I thought I'd go for it. And I was lucky enough to get the job, and I've been working with Concern for about 3.5 years now, traveling around to our different countries of operation and just documenting the different programs that we do there, speaking to people about their lives, and yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Almost as simple as that.
Was it the school or the college class you do like you went to, or both?
It was the college, for the College of Further Education.
I went there as well. Okay,
Very good.
Kev, I read, I know there's a front page article in the Northside People East about you this week. I didn't have a chance to read it, to be honest, so I haven't read it yet. But I read the article about yourself and Karen McConville from Concern in the Irish Mirror that came out about 3 weeks ago. Could you tell our listeners on there, for those who don't know, about what you were saying in that article, and then tell them how the situation has changed since?
Yeah, sure. So myself and Kieran, we work within the communications department. So when any kind of humanitarian emergency happens, like the one that's happening in the Ukraine, we usually are the first to head out to basically report on what's happening. So a couple of days into this humanitarian crisis, myself and Kieran joined an assessment team with Concern, who went firstly to Poland, and then we split off into two groups. One group went to Slovakia and Hungary, and I went to Romania, basically just to assess the needs in those countries, as tens, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians sought shelter and safety in their neighbouring countries. So we went with the assessment team. The assessment team was there to essentially just assess where Concern could be of help. We're a big humanitarian agency, and this is very much what we do whenever there's an emergency like this. So we went and we visited the different border crossings. We just heard from the people crossing. We spoke to local mayors and different government officials about how they were handling the situation, what they think will happen in the future, what they need in terms of like help, services, supplies, that kind of stuff. And so I think we went to about 5 or 6 different border crossings in total. We assessed the need, and we're currently putting in place our response, which will be a lot to do with just facilitating the people who've had to flee, whether that be in their neighbouring countries or those who've decided to stay within the Ukraine. No one really knows how long this is going to go on for, and that means there's going to be a lot of displaced people that are essentially they need shelter, they need food, they need warmth, they need proper sanitation, things like this, and that's kind of where Concern comes in.
And that article you said in the Mirror a few weeks ago, you and Kieran predicted that the situation was going to get a lot worse as regards to the volume of people leaving Ukraine, and that has happened, hasn't it?
It, currently in the last week or so, they've seen a slowdown of people actually crossing the border. They're seeing a lot more people trying to stay within the boundaries of the Ukraine in the west of the country. So initially there was 100,000. I think the figures from Poland initially were about 100,000 Ukrainians crossing the border into Poland per day, which that is now down to about 45,000 per day. So still a huge amount of people, but a lot of people are deciding to stay in Ukraine in the hopes that they can go home. And obviously, leaving leaving your country is a very hard decision to make, and requires some level of financial ability and also links within Europe and those countries to go. A lot of people don't have that, and they have gone. But what we're seeing is there's a lot of people deciding to stay.
Okay, we haven't got time to go through all of this today on radio, Gavin, but could you tell me a bit about what your work on the border of Ukraine and your other work, your work overseas with Concern in general, has taught you over the last few years?
I think that's a good question. I think it's just that one time I think is in times of need. I think the humanity and the solidarity of people, especially in neighbouring countries, really comes to the fore. You see a lot of great solidarity and generosity from just regular people. Like, we're a big humanitarian agency, but we've seen a lot of just individuals giving a lot selflessly in this crisis, and it's amazing to see, and yeah.
Okay, Gavin, where do you see this war in Ukraine leading, both in the Ukrainian context and in a wider European and Irish context?
I think if I knew that question, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. I don't think anybody really knows. I think it changes by the day, and I don't think anyone can be too sure. We've seen a lot of destruction in cities that won't be able to be repaired overnight, and I think from our perspective, that's where we'll hopefully help to support those in need.
Okay, Gavin, do you have any plans to do any more travelling and work overseas with Concern in the short term, or are you taking a break after your recent work?
No, I'll be doing a bit of travelling probably in the summer. It never stops. The world keeps turning. I think I'll be visiting Kenya and Haiti, I believe, are on the calendar, and I possibly will be going back to Ukraine as well.